I'm 24 stone, I've got type 2 diabetes, I'm losing feeling in my feet.
We've been through the cancer and that was just horrendous for the whole family.
You are treated as that's how it's going to be.
I don't want to become dependent on a little pill that tells me I'm going to be all right.
I was put on a diet at the age of 3, and then again I was put on a diet at the age of 12, and it's never worked. They've never dug deeper, and I think that's the key to it. I think, I don't even know myself. It's just really at a point where, something's drastically got to change.
I've got 3 kids.
To see these guys see me set an example of a healthy lifestyle blows my mind. Just seeing my image on that scan and seeing just the red outline of me, and then just looking at that and thinking, how the hell have I got to this point?
You can go down a different path. That's as simple as that. It's a tough path, but you can do this.
I really need fixing.
I need a long-term fix.
If your dad can do it, your dad's inspired me.
Yeah, you can change your skill. You can make your life better.
I really want it. I don't care what anybody says, I'm going to do it.
I won't walk, I don't want to walk. I don't mind going up in stages.
Go!
Come on, you're nearly there.
I use the granny cog all the way.
Come on!
This change is just fantastic.
Come on, Jerry!
So just some background on the Fixing Challenge. After Fixing Dad aired in 2016 on the BBC, lots and lots of people came to us and were inspired by what we'd done. And in 2017, we partnered with the London Marathon and Prudential to put out an application process for people to come forward if they wanted to fix a family member. And this really wasn't about somebody coming in and a doctor's coming in to fix people. It was actually about families coming together to see what they could do as families in the same way as we'd done with our dad. So it provided that inspiration, and that became the Fixing Challenge. So I think about 2,500 people came forward to apply for the Fixing Challenge, and 4 people were chosen. And Craig Russell, who you saw in that film, was one of those people. So for us, a really interesting theme that came out of the Fixing Challenge was this idea of the sort of transfer of power from the doctor in terms of empowering a patient and allowing someone to actually go forward and carry their own health project for the future, something that would be sustainable for the long term. And Professor Roy Taylor, who's also going to join us today, was absolutely instrumental in that for us and our dad, and similarly so within the Fixing Challenge. So I'd highly recommend, if you haven't seen the Fixing Challenge, to go and have a look at that at fixingus.com. But I wanted to say a big welcome, first of all, to Craig Russell. Craig's with us today, and I just want to talk to Craig a bit about his first-hand experience in terms of taking control of his health. And it's something Craig definitely did during the course of this. We've seen lots and lots of patients, do this, but this was a really, really incredible example. Craig, I think over the last, in those 6 months, lost about 7 stone. It was an incredible achievement. So, Craig, was there a moment in that whole process when you felt you took control of your health?
Yes. I think the big thing for me was understanding what worked, and being picked to do the challenge, I think was a big inspiration as well, because at the end of the day, you guys have put your faith in me in a sense that you saw that it was a possibility that I could, turn my life around by losing the weight. So for me it was almost, I've got to do this. After what I'd seen with your dad, the losing feeling in the right foot, yes, that's never going to come back for me. But at the end of the day, taking charge and basically being given some tools to basically, lose that weight, and the potential has been huge.
And because you've now you've been in remission from diabetes for the last 3 years now, haven't you? Since the Fix and Challenge.
5 days in of doing the 800 calories a day, I had to be removed off all medication because my blood sugars were going too low. Mind you, doing a 20-mile bike ride against Roy's advice was a little bit stupid, but to get your blood sugars down to 1.9 after a 25-mile bike ride, and then realizing, hang on a minute, this isn't right, was a little bit foolish. But from there on in, it was almost plain sailing. You follow the plan of the actual meal plan, and you can't go far wrong. But it's having those tools in front of you to follow a plan in that sense, as in the help to be able to then lose the weight. And it's finding what works for you. For me, I've tried every diet under the sun. I've tried Weight Watchers numerous times. I tried, all sorts of things. And nothing ever worked.
So what was the difference, do you think, in terms of you actually taking control this time? Because I know the diabetes, you'd had it for some time, hadn't you? I mean, it was 3 years before you came onto the program.
It's probably a bit more than that, actually. So what are we on now? 2020. So I think I was diagnosed 2012, 13, something like that, if I remember right. I haven't got the stuff in front of me. I can't tell you exactly. But, sort of when you go and see the doctor, it's like, here's a blood test. Let's see what you're at. So you have the blood test. All right, your blood sugars are doing this, right? Okay, just keep an eye on it. It'll be all right. Manage it with your diet. You'll be all right. And it's like, oh right, okay. And then before you know it, I was like, a year down the line, we'll have another test. Okay. Oh, that's quite significant now. Here's a tablet. And it was just like, right, okay. So we're now on medication. And you think, like, I thought, like, I've got real big trust in my GPs. They've been brilliant, to be fair, throughout. I've been with the same GP for 21 years, and I know them all personally. They're all keen cyclists, randomly. Seen my GP out numerous times on bike rides, and charity bike rides where I've done charity bike rides on the lead up to the Fixing Challenge, and he's gone, oh, like, you're looking really good, it's brilliant, to the point where they recommended doing the 800 calories to a friend, because it's wife and husband sort of GP practice, and they both had this friend who'd got type 2 diabetes, and they recommended the same as what I did through you guys to him, to this guy, and he's reversed his type 2 diabetes. Now, with me taking control, it was all about having the tools to know, which, you don't get given, I don't think, as much as you should. It's like, well, here's a tablet. It's not, here's a cure.
We found exactly the same thing. Yeah, we found exactly the same thing with that. The information we got from the doctors at the time, and I don't think this was anything unique or particularly, bad, in terms of what our dad's doctor was advising, but it was very general advice. It was almost like, this is just common sense. You should lose weight, and you should, so eat less and exercise more. But there were no real specifics, and there was no specific sort of hope given. And that was when, we were sort of Googling everything and trying to work out, is there a way forward that where there's more hope involved? And that was when we came across Professor Roy Taylor's study. And suddenly there was this word reversal in there, and it was it was exciting, you know, that it gives you this sort of moment of actually this is something you can do, you can actually do something meaningful about. And that was when we went to see Roy Taylor, and obviously our dad's story is history, but that was why we wanted so much to get Professor Roy Taylor involved in the Fixing Challenge, and so it's probably a good place for you to come in, actually, Roy. Welcome, and it'd be just great to hear from you about this subject of putting power in the hands of the patient and giving them that hope and inspiration.
Thank you very much. I'm delighted to be talking, and fantastic to meet Craig again. So really, the whole business of medicine is trying to help people feel better, to solve whatever issues they have. And although it's sometimes dressed up in fancy terms, it's all about helping people live better lives, healthier lives, happier lives. And as part of this, I've been working with diabetes, both kinds of diabetes, but my research has been on type 2 diabetes predominantly. And throughout my career, the question has been, what causes it? Because it seemed to be so complicated. And if you go to the textbooks that all your GPs would be well familiar with, then it's a complex disease, it's inevitably downhill. And I was working all the way through trying to understand what happened to food after you eat it. That seemed to be a pretty basic thing, because we all eat every day. And by about 2000, I'd figured that really it was the liver that was really calling the shots. And a few years later, we realized that it was fat in the liver that was really preventing insulin working properly. And that's when glucose levels start to rise. But suddenly in 2006, the possibility occurred to me that it might all be dead simple. So it wasn't just one organ that was bad, it wasn't the liver, it was the liver and the pancreas. And suddenly saying type 2 diabetes is a simple disorder of too much fat inside the liver and the pancreas suddenly gave me a different perspective. And I was then able to say, look, if this is right, we can demonstrate it's right by getting people to lose weight, substantial amount of weight, and everything should go away. So I published that hypothesis, which was greeted with enormous skepticism, and managed to get funding. Now, this is a key. The research funding is that which unlocks the door to everything. And it was Diabetes UK that provided the relatively small amount of research funding needed to show me whether my idea was wrong or whether it was right. And this study, the Counterpoint study, was absolutely the sort of results that hit you between the eyes. I've never had a hypothesis that come out with such a clear test. There was a dramatic reversal of type 2 diabetes. And because of our tests that we'd developed using advanced methods of using scanning, magnetic scanning, MRI scanning in the body, we were able to say, okay, it is right. It's just a simple matter of too much fat in the liver and the pancreas. Send it away and it'll stay away. Now, that was in 2011, and still we're here today. And some GPs, not all, but some GPs are still handing out the old information. And indeed, some experts are clinging to the idea of complexity because that's where they grew up. It takes a long time to change a belief system. And so I'm just steadily working away, producing more and more information. But I might be able to show you something interesting that's actually happened inside your body, Craig. I wonder if we could have those slides I sent through. So this first slide shows just what's so critically important about getting rid of diabetes. It's the amount of weight loss. Originally, I'd calculated that 15 kilograms would be enough to do it. That might sound a lot, but we're not messing around here. We're talking about trying to get health back. So we've got to say what's really true. And what we found in our biggest study was just if you did lose 15 kilograms, and that's the bar on the right-hand side, then you had at least a 70% chance of being free of diabetes 2 years later. So that was really quite remarkable. On the other hand, if you just lose a tiny amount of weight, you don't really have much chance at all. Way down to the other side, there's about 5% chance of getting rid of diabetes if you only lose 5 kilograms. Now, I'd just point out that 5 kilograms would usually be regarded as a magnificent success in view of everything that's gone before, because medicine hasn't really grasped that you need such a lot of weight loss. But coming on to you at this point, Craig, I'm saying losing 15 kilograms. Now, you lost considerably more than that, didn't you?
So I think when I started, I was bang on 23.5 stone when I went through your scanner. Now, I think had got down to about 19 stone when I then went through your scanner again. That was in the June, I think, beginning of June. And then after that, when I got on the scales day before Ride London, which was 30th of July, I was 16 stone 8.
Wow. So that is just fantastic, Craig. So in the period that we saw you, up to that second scan, you'd lost about 26, 27 kilograms. And so you were way at the right-hand side of this slide. And so you were highly likely to have got rid of your diabetes with a good prospect of keeping it off. So that's the starting point. You'd actually done what people need to do, and that is to get the weight down. And if we could have this next slide, please. This is actually what's happening inside you. If we start over on the left-hand side, Craig, where it says 0, that's at baseline, then your pancreas would have looked pretty raggy inside. It would be irregular in shape and really quite thin and wasted. And even after 6 months, now this is after you've got back to normal, everything's hunky-dory as regards your glucose tests, but your pancreas gland, the organ, hasn't changed. You've still got a shriveled little walnut in there instead of a nice plum, as it were. But within a year, hey, look, this is getting back to normal. 2 years, it's well on the way to being normal. And for comparison, there's a nice normal pancreas from someone of equivalent weight. So that's what's actually gone on inside you. You know, you can be really pleased. Your pancreas has actually recovered to the nice smooth shape that you were born with. That's fantastic. So well done on that. Let me just show you that in numbers. If we could have the next slide. This is how your pancreas has changed from a relatively small size here, volume here, and it takes a long time to begin improving, but it improves. Now, one reason I'm showing you this is that it's so exciting to be able to see real physical change inside the organs of the body, because I've still got a lot of skepticism amongst experts who say, oh, it's just well-controlled diet. It's nothing to do with the basic process. Well, you know, this actually stamps the die and really makes it very clear. What you've done, Craig, is to restore this main organ of diabetes, the pancreas, back to normal size. And there's something else as well. You remember I pointed out that this pancreas was a bit lacy and irregular in outline? Well, next slide, please. That irregularity goes from being very irregular and not much change at about 5 or 6 months, but a year's better. 2 years, it's completely normal. So, congratulations, Craig. You have got a completely normal, smooth pancreas. So, that's an amazing achievement. And I hope that this new information, it was only published last month, I hope this new information will help bring more experts online to actually understand type 2 diabetes is a simple condition. So
Wow.
that's the new information that I'm excited about. But tell me, Craig, how does that strike you?
To see that and say, right, 2 years down the line, right, you're effectively cured. We can't say cured, I know that, but in a very good
It's
way, like
interesting.
you used to.
It's really interesting you say that, Craig, because the whole subject of what you can and can't say in type 2 diabetes is quite an interesting one. Because we went through this for so long. Because once we did what we did with Dad, and then we realised that some people object to the idea of reversal. Some people object to cure, remission, whatever it is you use. It's just, for us, it was hope. You had to have. I think for us, in the end, we settled on reverse direction, and my dad was in reverse gear.
Yeah.
And as long as we kept him in reverse gear, we were we were all right.
Yeah.
And so it's kind of a process. But would you agree with that, Roy? Is it something that is there still a controversy around what we call this?
Yes, there's a lot of misunderstanding. First of all, the cure thing. Well, in the one sense, yes, of course, Craig has managed to cure himself of this illness that would be otherwise marching on and causing more and more trouble. You'd be numb to above your ankle on both feet by now, Craig, had you not taken action. And so, in that sense, yes, of course. However, I much prefer to avoid the word cure purely because you're still susceptible to diabetes. If your weight went back up to, say, more than, I don't know, possibly 19, 20 stone, it's highly likely the diabetes will come back. If it went back up to where you started, it's 100% likely. And so it's because if you like, the threat is always there, that I'd prefer to avoid the word cure. And the other reason is that my fellow experts are still extremely sensitive about this. So I would want to avoid that sort of provocation. I just need to bring people on board and get them to understand just the real nature of this disease. So that's cure. Now, this reversal business is exactly what we're doing. It's what I set out to test. I wanted to find out if diabetes was reversible, and I've studied the pathways that underlie that. And I can say that yes, we know why the reversal happens. So reversal is real. Now, rather bizarrely, some people say you can't talk about reversal because that means to some people it's a permanent thing. Well, the other day I reversed my car into the drive, and I do hope it'll still go forwards. So I think it's a misunderstanding about the words. But then, words are always troublesome, and people get het up about these things. So remission is what you achieve long term. Yes, I mean, that is the state of being free of diabetes. Reversal is the process of going from diabetes back to normal. And so those two terms are correct. In a modified sense, you could say cure, but I would much prefer to avoid that. So that's how the words stack up to me.
And this is, the overhanging sort of title of this whole section is tackling the patient engagement challenge. So in that respect, before, and I'll let you bring you back in a minute, Craig, but how important do you think this idea is? I mean, you see it really clearly there in that graphic, of the pancreas. There is this clear sort of process of reversal, and you can see it happening. And there's no denying that. You can see it happening there. So how important do you think this is in terms of actually engaging a patient?
Well, I think it's critically important because here we've got a very visual indication of what can happen inside the body. And people like to understand what's happening. If I prescribe a drug to anyone, the first question is, but what will it do to me? How does it work, doctor? And if I advise anything to do with how they live or what they do, what will it do to me? How does that work? And it's what people want to know. And now we can explain very simply that the pancreas is really battered. It's small and shrunken. It's just not working to produce the insulin. But if you take away the excess fat that it's struggling with, it might be able to get back to normal. And the shorter time you've had your diabetes, the more likely it is to be able to get back completely to normal. So we can hold out real hope to people. And I hope by conveying this very simple information, we'll actually transform the whole way that type 2 diabetes is approached.
One of the things I would just caveat with the fixing challenge is I think a lot of people look at that story and they see the 100-mile cycle ride, and that can become a bit of a focus, and it's like you've got to get on a bike and cycle 100 miles. And one of the things we're always keen to dispel, Roy, is around the exercise, food, focus, balance, because I know it's much more, isn't it, about the food, especially in the initial section of weight loss, much more about the food focus than the exercise.
Yes, that's absolutely right, because we've got to be realistic about the group of people who tend to run into type 2 diabetes. They tend to be a bit older, they tend to be a bit heavy, and these are people who can't actually exercise for terribly long. Indeed, if they take it upon themselves to go running a lot, they're likely to run into bad arthritis of the knees at a relatively early age. It's not a good idea. But they won't be able to burn off the sort of number of calories anywhere near what Craig mentioned just there, which is, for someone in peak form at a nice weight. So they might go out and just about exercise for half an hour, and that burns a trivial number of calories. They can get rid of that and counterbalance it with literally a mouthful or two of food. And that unequal balance is not really recognized. And, you've mentioned putting the power in the hands of people. And this is all part of it, because it's all about the information. Yes, the detailed know-how and how to do it is important. But this is why I recently set about writing a book about this, just to tell people in simple terms what happened to food after they eat it. For instance, most people haven't got a clue that if they eat excessive carbohydrate, the body turns it into fat. And even experts don't realize that's where saturated fat comes from. If you eat excess carbohydrate, 100% of it is the bad form of fat. Now, you mentioned before tucking into that chunk of blue cheese on top of your fat. Well, the blue cheese has got relatively smaller amounts of saturated fat, and even that nice tasty layer of fat around your steak, Craig, is only 50% saturated fat. Now, you don't understand that from the conventional chat about food and what's good for you. So it's not the fat on your plate that's bad for you, it's the fat that you've stored inside you. And that's a critical thing. So all this information I've tried to put on our website just to try and make the information available to all. There is a website which contains a lot of this how to do it information, but also the book, Life Without Diabetes. By the way, all profits to Diabetes UK that put in that critical amount of funding to found this whole area of understanding of what type 2 diabetes actually is. That's all due to Diabetes UK, and all the profits from that book go to Diabetes UK. So in more detail, this is where it's all at. So you can find out what really happens to your food. A basic form of it is on the website, but more tilted at just the mechanism of getting rid of your diabetes. So this fits with the thrust that you mentioned in this program. We need to put this in the hands of people who can make what they will of it. It's not obligatory. It's up to anyone to decide what food they put in their mouth. So in a way, it's not really a medical decision, but it is information that's useful for people. So that's why I'm so passionate about finding out how it actually works and then trying to explain it in simple language.
I think that's brilliant, because that's so important, because I just, thinking back on the number of people that say to us, we're so inspired by your story, or one of the stories that we've shown. and I've just gone and got myself a bike, or I've gone and got myself, you know, a new pair of shorts, and they're out running straight away, but there's very little focus sometimes on the food. So I think that split is really is power in the hands of the patient, just to understand that.
I think for me, I was always like growing up, you know, like, you know, my story, Roy, you know, age 3, I've recently, my uncle died a year ago. And, you know, he had a load of cine films of me as a kid. Now, I've posted a few on Facebook, and Anthony's seen a few of these already. And you can tell that I was overweight from day one, pretty much, on these cine films. So I've had them converted, so they're all, you know, digital now. And, you know, going back to that age, put on a diet at the age of 3 and told to eat low-fat foods throughout my whole life growing up was, yeah, that's what you do. And for me now, I suppose, having all of that turned on its head to the point where it's like, you know, carbohydrate is what's caused you to have diabetes, effectively. You know, because I've piled the carbs in for however many years, or done a low-fat diet, which you think you're doing the right thing doing a low-fat diet. You eat low-fat foods. Then you, like, more recently, in the last sort of 5-6 years, I've been looking at the labels and going, oh my God, how much sugar? You know, and it's like, wow, you know, and having that information there now and saying, right, okay, you know, the sugar content of that compared to that is like, well, I'm going to go full fat every day of the week. And the way I've looked at it is it's all about managing my sugar intake with this whole process of change in my lifestyle. It's not about, you know, the calories I'm putting in and how much I'm putting in. Yes, I am, you know, sort of careful, but I don't actively count calories. It's, for me, it's all about the sugar content of food to manage, you know, I suppose, my pancreas, which is now very, very nice and smooth, Roy, yeah?
Absolutely. And this is worth a comment, Craig, because this business about the carbohydrate often gets a bit out of focus. And people talk about low carbohydrate diets as a way to lose weight. It can be. It depends how much carbohydrate people eat. But we've got to realize that this state of having accumulated more fat than your own body can cope with is actually due to having too much food. It's as simple as that. It doesn't matter what you eat. Whatever it is, you've eaten too much of it. And we need to first remove that. And that's why we've got this sudden drop. But when it comes to the phase that you're in, Craig, then it's a matter of whatever suits the individual. And by focusing on avoiding sugar-containing foods, which automatically means you won't be having any processed ready meals, you won't be eating prepared meals. If you read the labels, they've got a hideous amount of sugar in. So what you're doing is absolutely right. But if you'd just gone on to a low-carb diet at the start, it would not have done very much for you.
No, that's right, yeah. So I didn't explain myself very well there. Basically, in this process that I'm in now, you know, after losing the weight, you know, it's, for me, it's about doing the low carb thing now and keeping to that to, you know, to stop me from, I suppose, relapsing in a way. For want of a better
that's where I
description.
think that was where the blood sugar monitoring was really powerful. Once you'd finished the 800 calorie phase, actually monitoring what different foods, the effect of different foods, was really effective blood glucose monitoring, as opposed to just we see so many people who just have a blood monitor and you look at when they're actually monitoring, it's very random. Whereas actually, if you monitor at the specific times, you know, an hour and a half after eating, see how quickly it's coming back down, and you can see immediately, you know, which foods are causing bigger spikes and affecting your averages, I guess.
We're touching on a wider issue here. The diet, as it were, the average British diet has become overloaded with sugar, largely because of the influence of pre-prepared foods, processed foods, and the habit of adding sugar to meat dishes, whatever, to increase the palatability, certainly to get folk to come back and buy more. And we really need to get a handle on this. And this is something that legislators have constantly danced around. Just at this moment, we've got a fight back from the food companies who'd far prefer to continue what they're doing. So there's nothing wrong with the food companies. We need these commercial enterprises, but we need a level playing field that people making the laws, and it's got to be enshrined in law, voluntary agreements are highly unlikely to have an effect. That has to come. And those individuals that shout loudly about not wanting a nanny state have just got to be asked, look, do you really want to pay out £10 billion a year to look after type 2 diabetes? Because that's what it costs the NHS. £10 billion. Who likes paying tax? Hands up. Well, no. We've got to get real here and get away from these heated arguments and look at it in the cool light of day. So we do need some changes to ideas about national food production, distribution and availability. That's a really important point, because it's not so much our generation, it's a matter of looking after the young people so that they will have less troubles when they come to our stage of life.
Yeah.
That's brilliant. So, I mean, obviously today, the main audience will be healthcare professionals from all over the place. So it'd be good just to maybe get from each of you your top point or two that you think would be the good pieces of advice for them to take away for the good of patients.
For me, for someone, if they're a healthcare professional, to take this away would be stop trying to tell people what to do, help them change. Because as soon as you tell someone what to do, people rebel against it, I think, and I was one of those people. It was like, telling me what to do, having a go at me, it's not fair, and a lot of people react like that. For me, it was about having my mind opened to a different way of doing things.
And that's where Roy, right now, that's changing at the moment, isn't it? So isn't this becoming more mainstream now in the NHS?
Yes, absolutely right. If I was just to underscore Craig's point, because he said something really very profound there for healthcare professionals. He said, stop telling them what to do, help them change. And that's really crucial. Although, of course, it has to be based on knowing exactly how and what to do in achieving this change. But we've shown that to be the case. So, a couple of points. First of all, we're in a fairly exciting position of actually moving things forward, because we've been able to move from this new understanding of type 2 diabetes, this discovery funded by Diabetes UK of finding out what causes the disease, to today, when I've just had a further meeting with NHS England about the rollout programme. There's a pilot programme in 10 sites throughout England to actually put this into practice, actually on the ground. And 5,000 people are going to enrol in this, and it will inform the NHS as to the most cost-effective way of doing this. And so things are moving. It takes a long time, but the understanding is rolling. So that's just a background. So you asked for a single point as to what I'd want healthcare professionals to take away from this. I would say the critical thing was, at the time of diagnosis of type 2 diabetes, this is a medical emergency. You don't mess around saying, it won't bother you very much, we've got tablets and we've got guidelines to treat this. That's a matter of supervising the inevitable decline. No, what you need to do at the time of diagnosis is to say, look, you have a choice. It is possible to get your health back. It's not easy, but you can do it, and this is how. On the other hand, we can give you tablets, we can supervise it, but we know there are huge risks. You're going to lose at least 7 years of life. You're going to suffer a lot of complications, and that's a polite term for it because you just don't want to go there. Well,
Right.
that information should be provided to people so they have a clear choice. Now, I'm not suggesting that everyone must opt for getting rid of diabetes. It doesn't suit everybody. Not everyone wants to do it at a particular point in life. It's not something that should be regarded as a stick with which to beat people. On the other hand, having clear information should be what we do as healthcare professionals. We're in the business of providing information and advising people. And so that would be my wish. You've got type 2 diabetes. You have a choice. So that's my message.
That's fantastic, fantastic message, and I think from both of you there, we've seen both perspectives, and it's really powerful. So thank you so much, Craig, and thank you so much, Professor Roy Taylor. Thanks for your time today.
My pleasure.